nice one.
That's bizarre. It's good. It looks like it's going to another feed. Looks like it's going to Where's God When I Need Him Most. You may have to open up, go to the main page.
Okay.
It looks like it's live.
Let me see. Right here, I think it's channel. This is a channel, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
What is that when I need him most? Is that what you want me to pick?
There it is. Okay, let everyone in the other stream know. It just, hey everybody. So, if you're watching this now, you're wondering, wait, this is in the wrong spot. We're working with new technology again. So, yeah, anyway, that's how technology goes. Welcome, I'm Sean. You're wonderful, and thank you for watching. So, thinkers, tonight we are going to be talking about, sorry, that's our alarm, it's automated. The books in our library, and yes, this is in fact our library. So this is our print section, if you will. We actually have several more bookshelves about this size, but this is our theological biblical library. So for us, I prefer, and I think we've talked about this before on the channel, print materials. I don't like as much digital media stuff when I'm reading consecutively. Erika's more flexible, but for me, I really, really enjoy this if I'm reading something. Now, for my commentaries, you'll notice over here in this section, I've got some commentaries on these shelves, but the bulk of my commentaries aren't print anymore. They're on Logos Bible software, and that's because it just works so much better for that type of thing, where I just need a snippet of something from a few verses, or I need a little bit of data. So for resources like that, I really don't need them in print. Think of them sort of like a dictionary or I don't know, any other tool like that where you're just looking at isolated things. So that's, for me, is much easier to use in that type of digital environment, particularly with all the cross references. Anyway, we'll talk about that for another night. So again, print library. So starting from top to working the way down, not going every book. Just going to give you guys an overview of what we've got here, and then I'll get into some of my favorite books and some of Erika's. Now, if you're wondering, Sean, where is Erika? She's right here in the room. She's monitoring the chat as well as trying to help out with the technical difficulties, getting everyone rerouted because of the link issue. So she may join us, she may not. She's also not feeling very well tonight anyway, so I told her to sit down and rest. It's fine. All right? So I'll be covering some of her favorite books as well. And so without any further ado, let's get started. So, starting from this side, this whole entire shelf is all philosophy and the different sub-disciplines of philosophy. Now, I don't have every sub-discipline covered here. All right, these are just some of the more basic ones, and I'll talk about that in just a sec. So, philosophy in and of itself, and sort of like historical philosophy areas and whatnot, as well as tools of philosophy. And then moving into logic and logical fallacies. Then straight away into epistemology, which runs clear through to about here. Metaphysics is the rest of the shelf, almost. Then ethics. 2 books on aesthetics currently. I would like to get more, but I don't know that it's really all that practical for me. And then philosophical theology as well as philosophy of religion thereafter. And then continuing on. Now, this whole entire section from here over is all theology proper for the most part. So these are going to be, most of these starting from here over are all your typical type theology textbooks like Grudem and different ones like that, which we'll cover in just a second. But from here we've got pneumatology, so the Holy Spirit and angels, and then bibliology as well. So when you start breaking theology apart into sub-disciplines like that, some of those are on the shelf. And the Trinity runs from here to here. There's roughly 16 volumes in that section right now. And then God proper the rest of the way. Dr. Craig's books on theology for children, which are awesome. We'll be talking about those in a minute. Ryrie's basic theology. It's really a systematic of sorts, or doctrines. And then Ben Witherington's stuff, Beale, Erickson. Oops, sorry, that's Erickson. Geisler, Grudem, real common household names in theology. Feinberg, brilliant book. And then another one on Feinberg on bibliology. And then New Testament theology, historical theology, historicity stuff, stuff like that. Then getting into apologetics is this entire row or section. So from here, sort of cults, which I don't use a whole lot because, to be honest with you guys, I find that most of those resources are not accurate to what different groups say are their doctrinal beliefs. So I tend to be very careful with those types of resources, not just because it could be considered pejorative, depending on what is listed in some of those books entitled cults, but they really honestly, from my studies of those different religions, they're not usually very accurately represented, or maybe they're not current. Maybe that's the best way to say that. But I still have them in my library. Then dealing with archaeology and whatnot, and then pretty much apologetics proper, did all the different stuff, which I'll cover some of the books, as well as like theistic evolution. J.P. Moreland's publication. Well, there's several editors in there. Meyer, Shaw, a few others. So that's a great resource. Some intelligent design books, Signature in the Cell by Myers. And then some more resources here. These are biblical dictionary stuff, which are really not really dictionaries per se. They're sort of a combination of that and a almost like a commentary, sort of, or maybe, I don't know, like a biblical encyclopedia might be a better way of thinking of it. Then soteriology, Christology, resurrection, and then the bottom shelf is a combination of everything bibliology. So it's going to deal with sort of everything bibliology, I guess. That's my way of how I've organized it. So these are going to be texts that are everything from historical reliability, New, Old Testament. There's a couple volumes on that we're going to talk about tonight. Inerrancy stuff, textual criticism textbooks, and then hermeneutics, homiletics, exegesis textbooks, a lot of Greek New Testament resources, and then Greek textbooks themselves. And I said homiletics already, but they're actually over here on the end. Like I said earlier, there is a lot that's not in the print library here. There's probably about 1,000 volumes of work here, give or take. Might be a little more, might be a little less. Again, we also have books throughout the house. We've got 2 more bookshelves this size in another room. I've got several bookshelves in my office, and then the kids have some cubby bookshelves too. So we love to read in this house. Something they used to tell us in college is readers are leaders. Go ahead. Something not working?
6 people are watching.
Oh, great.
So
Thanks. Abby's voice you hear behind the camera. She's letting me know. We've got viewers. Awesome, Pumpkin. Thank you. Yeah. So anything you wanted to add from your seat, Mama? Anything? I'm going to get right into the books right now. But.
Oh, okay. Why don't you talk about your favorites first?
Okay, I'll do that. And oh, by the way, you guys, Japan just had a big earthquake. I think
That's
6.8 over there,
Yes.
where Erica's family lives. So pray for the people in Japan there. I don't know much about it. Only 13 injured. Is that right?
That's the latest that I read.
13
And
injured.
the way I understand that, it happened this morning in Eastern time.
Okay, so this morning
Nighttime
Eastern
in
time. So
Japan,
those of you
that's
may
not-
already be aware of it. We don't watch
Yes.
news a whole lot in the house. Currently, I don't have anything against it. We're just very, very busy, so that's why.
Right.
All right, so getting into some of my favorite stuff. So we've talked about this in our previous live stream, and that is, we start with Philosopher's Toolkit by Beghini, Peter S. Fossil, Julian Beghini and Peter S. Fossil. Now, this is an incredibly good book, I find, particularly when you're studying philosophy and you're trying to remember all of the different things that you're learning from different philosophers. This sort of cuts out a lot of the historical end of it and just gets to the nitty and gritty of how the tools work themselves. And I think it gives some incredibly well-crafted explanations for some things that can be sometimes difficult to understand. I can remember doing a paper or something, and I came across a didicto de re distinction, and I couldn't remember exactly with clarity what it was, and the author in another publication was referring to it. So I pulled this out. It was the last resource I grabbed, and sure enough, the description in this was so good. I thought, man, I need to go back to just reading this. It used to be I would take this in and sit down in the morning and just read one section on it, which is just literally one little thing. It might be 2 pages long every day, and I love it. So it's a resource. It'd be like trying to sit down and read a dictionary. Just keep in mind it's not meant for that kind of entertaining read, so to speak, but it's a great resource. In that same field, the Critical Thinking Toolkit, again by Fossil, Forsman and Watson, okay, and this is made by by the same publisher, Wiley Blackwell. So it's Critical Thinking Toolkit, fantastic publication. Very similar to the Philosopher's Toolkit, but a little bit more, how do I want to put it? It's not just actually philosophy, well, neither is the first one, I guess, but you're going to get tools of logic. So when you're dealing with Boolean squares of opposition, if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. At some point I'll cover it on our Patreon channel, and Venn diagrams and how you're comparing different statements, okay? But great book, again, deals with a lot of good material. And then lastly, in the same vein of these three, is Philosophical Devices by David, and I don't know if I'll pronounce this right, Papineau. Proofs, Probabilities, Possibilities, and Sets. And again, same thing as the other two. This is not really meant to be a sit-down sort of textbook. It's more of a reference work, I guess. Though, unlike Philosopher's Toolkit, of the three, these two are more readable. I mean, they're all readable, but the type of thing that you would sit down and actually read. So those three I highly recommend. And here's the best part. You don't have to be a philosopher or have a lot of philosophical training to get something out of it. You can be a complete novice in it, pick those up, read it, and you go, oh, okay. Now, application may be a bit fuzzy on some of them, but you'll figure it out pretty quick. So, another one, this is recent to our library, The Voyage of Discovery. Bought this used on Amazon. I had to have it for school. Incredibly good book. Again, sort of deals with the heuristics or tools of philosophy, where it will cover a particular philosopher and then talk about the philosopher's actual method and break it down in detail. So like the Socratic method, it will actually break down Socrates' method, talk about the different things that the philosopher, beliefs that they held to, and maybe methods that they've used. So really great work. Any questions on any of those works, Mom, that anyone has asked?
No.
Okay.
They're saying that they are going to buy some of the books.
Yeah.
They are loving the new setup because, yeah, take a look. Comments show up on the screen, so they're loving it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep using that then, maybe, guys. I'm glad to hear that. We're using. I have to remember what we're using for the software, but I'm glad you guys like that. We're a lot of good, cool changes coming, so I'm glad to hear that you guys are enjoying it. And the lighting's okay?
Yes, lighting is good.
It's
Okay.
fine.
So you said logic. I'm not really going to dive too deep into that because that's preference. Although I will mention that John from JMD Apologetics had recommended Patrick Hurley's book on logic, and I picked up, as you can see, used copy. Folks, I get stuff like this used all the time because most of them are textbooks. They're great, but the nice thing is normally you pay $100, you can get them for under $20, so you can just go nuts, if you get them. And I don't care because they're textbooks. They're going to have underlining and stuff like that. It is what it is. Because I'm using them more for reference work, I'm not too worried about that. I tend not to like underlining in a lot of my books, but again, I'll suffer through it to save a lot of money. So, epistemology, I think I've got 21 volumes in that section. Now, epistemology, as you guys know, is sort of dealing with knowledge, the sources of knowledge, different things like that. And so it's very vitally important to me. I just love the field in general, but I find it incredibly valuable in terms of justification for our beliefs. So that's, as you can imagine, if you're doing apologetics, why that's very, very helpful, I guess, if you will. I did recommend on another broadcast, How Do We Know, by James Dew Jr. and Mark W. Foreman. excellent publication. Excellent publication here, guys. Very easy to understand, takes you right through the basics. I bought this 4 or 5 years ago. Loved it so much I bought it for a friend, sent it to him. That's Uncle Adam. So, yeah, just absolutely love this publication. Can't recommend it highly enough. Going to be covering some of the material in it in the future. Got a bunch of books recently on evidentialism for epistemology, and this particular one, now this is very expensive for a book. Oxford Handbook of Epistemology and of Theology. So it's because it's hardcover. I don't like to get them when they're expensive or when they're because let me back up. I don't like to get them when they're hardcovers because they're going to be very expensive. Something like this is going to be over $100. In addition, they are now this one is over I think 600 pages, so you're getting quite a bit of bang for your buck. But still, unless you're really dedicated to the study, you know that may not be up your alley, so to speak. Now, metaphysics, the next section here, I would recommend Metaphysics, the Fundamentals by Robert C. Coons and Timothy H. Pickavance, I guess. Again, another Wiley Blackwell. And this is great. I mean, I have a few fundamental books on metaphysics. Now, you might be wondering why. What's the big deal about metaphysics in and of itself? So, metaphysics has a subdiscipline called ontology, which is really dealing with the nature of being. And this is critical for us as Christians because, of course, not only do we want to know what exists, but we want to be able to differentiate between solid, corporeal, and non-corporeal objects. So, like spirit type things, right? Like God, maybe. Okay, angels, those types of things. And so, this study has gone on for millennia about these types of things. What's physical, what's not. Aristotle's metaphysics. So, yeah, for quite a long time. So, these are great books. This one in particular I like because it really breaks things down into different fields from, I think, a really helpful standpoint. You don't have to have any background. So again, with most of these books I'm recommending, you don't need any background in the field to learn from them. All right. Now, some of you may also be wondering, why do you have so many basic books in these fields? And the reason is, I learned a long time ago, this is actually a neuro-linguistic programming technique, NLP, whereby what you do is you sort of gather up resources, several in a field, and you look at where there is overlap, where they're saying the same things. And you can pretty much consider those things to be, your bedrock or foundational things, all right? Now here I don't mean to say bedrock isn't a fact, I just mean bedrock isn't something on which the system is based. Where in philosophy, there's not always agreement. When you do get agreement on things, you pretty much know you've hit a bedrock fact. So sometimes I'll purchase 2 or 3 publications in the same sort of, for instance, like a base level book. Well, that might be why. Another reason, though, is that I purchase a publication and realize, oh, I don't like this. Maybe the author is speaking way over my head, or he's speaking too basic, and so I'm looking for pinpointing that publication that really hits the sweet spot. So now metaphysics has a lot in and of itself. I'm not going to get too much more into that. If you guys have questions, you can ask them. Put a Q, capital Q there, and Erika will.
There is a question.
Okay.
You need to answer it.
Yes, go ahead.
Best books for laymen to learn more on the Holy Spirit. Scott?
Okay, so best books on the layman to learn about the Holy Spirit. Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. See, I have some for Dr. Terry from school, and I don't think you can get those. They're not in print. He only made those for Trinity, as far as I know. And not Trinity, the current Trinity where I'm at, which is Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary, which if any of y'all are thinking about going to school, I'd recommend them because they're affordable. It's online, you can do it from home, and the professors are awesome, and you don't have to come from one specific background. So I love it there. And you can push back with the professors. And I don't mean be rude or insulting, but I'm just throwing that out there because it jogged my memory. The Holy Spirit by Charles Cadwell Ryrie, which is the C. So Charles Ryrie will work. The Holy Spirit is a pretty good book. I could almost recommend anything by Ryrie and feel pretty comfortable. He's recently gone home to be with the Lord. He's passed away, but maybe 5 years ago. He used to teach at Dallas Theological. Just a great guy. I've had the chance to sit and was I in? I'm trying to remember. I think I sat in one of his courses, just surveying it. Maybe I wasn't. I've got video of it, so sometimes it's a long story. It's hard to remember these days. So that might help. Anything that I'll also say, and I know Heiser doesn't currently have anything on that, but anything in that realm by Michael Heiser is actually really good. So Angels, I know he's got a new work coming out. Demons, and his publication Unseen Realm are great books. I love those. So I also recommend those. They're sort of in the same vein. Here. I have not had a chance to get real deep into this. He Who Gives Life. It's also Doctrine of the Holy Spirit by Graham A. Cole. And this is Foundations of Evangelical Theology. You'll see several of these books throughout the library here. And so this is a fantastic, I'm holding it up so Erika can see if I think she's looking to type things in there. So you guys wonder why I'm doing that. Generally speaking, I love these. So I think there's only one in the whole publication series that I'm like, it's not bad, but it's not as great as all the other ones. So I can almost say, even though I've only read through some of it, see my page marker, it's probably good. I mean, in other words, it is good. It's probably good enough to put my seal of approval on. On the Trinity, boy, it really depends. Guys, the reason why I have 16 resources in that right now is because the field's much broader than most people realize. First of all, you've got just the basic fundamentals of it, okay? And then you've got two different camps in there. You've got what would sometimes be called the Latin Trinity camp and then the Social Trinity camp. And I'm not going to give a lot of explanation on that right now. We can do that in another broadcast. But they're both fine. They're both orthodox. They just sort of lean one way or the other towards different positions. But unless somebody wanted to straw man one of the positions or the other, they're really fine. They fit within orthodoxy of the Trinity. They just try to solve different problems. And then you've got different issues of eternal generation, subordinationism, the issue that came up a few years back. It was really a big deal with how subordinate Jesus Christ is in the Trinity. Is he eternally subordinate? Was he subordinate to the Father prior to his incarnation? There's been a whole lot of recent literature on that. So that's why. Then, of course, I have some philosophical works there. One of my favorites, if you guys are philosophically inclined, which you probably are if you're watching this channel, Philosophical and Theological Essays on the Trinity. By Thomas McCall and Michael C. Ray. Now, I will warn you, if you have no background in philosophy, anything written in here by Richard Swinburne, who's brilliant, is going to go right over your head. It's hard for me to follow Dr. Swinburne because he's brilliant. And the way he publishes in, I want to say it's like analytical philosophy, so you're going to get stuff that looks like algebra, written formulations of his points. I think he's published in this. I've been particularly interested in this publication deals with what some call the Latin Trinity and the Social Trinity camps. So that's one of the reasons I like it. One other one that if you're maybe saying, well, I just want to get a good biblical foundation, I would say you can't really go wrong with James White's book on the Trinity. It's a good book. It does presuppose some things that I think should be teased out, some positions that I had a friend who read this and just thought that the things that Dr. White talks about were just universally accepted by all Trinitarians. Now here, what I mean is God's position in time and certain things that, it's not Dr. White's fault. He's taken it for granted that folks understand these different things. So it's a wonderful publication. I wouldn't be recommending it if it wasn't. I'm not as big on, I wouldn't recommend as much Saunders' work, although he's pretty famous out at Biola, and I like him. But he's a bit awkward to read sometimes. It's not that he's hard to understand, it just is his style. I don't mean to sound mean. You might read what he writes and just be like, oh, this is awesome. He's great. I mean, the guy can turn a phrase like nothing I've ever seen, but sometimes that may appeal to certain audiences and not to others. Again, there's nothing wrong theologically with his work. Then Alan F. Siegel's Two Powers in Heaven. Brilliant book by, I think Alan was a Jew his entire life or converted to Christianity. I'm not entirely sure on that 100%. So if somebody knows, you guys can leave that in the comments. But, okay, what I do know is that Dr. Siegel I'm saying doctor, he may not have been, takes rabbinic reports of rabbis and shows from the Old Testament how they viewed that there were two powers in the Old Testament, not just one. So you don't need to rely on just one passage in Genesis to show the Trinity, right? There is a ton of work in here, and he's showing it straight from the rabbinical works and talks about that quite a bit. So you would call this like a binitarian theology. Now, can we as Trinitarians show the Holy Spirit as well? Yes, but this is dealing with the two most critical, Christ. Well, I should be careful there. They're all critical, but I think for most, Jesus and his role in the Trinity is of utmost importance because, of course, if he is second member of the Trinity, he's God, salvation rises or falls on that. So that's why I'm saying that in that sense. I don't mean to exclude the Holy Spirit at all. Sorry, Holy Spirit. So anyway, moving on. Any questions on any of that, Mom?
Something, I don't know if this is not so much question to you, but people are talking like, certain authors trustworthy, what do you think? Would you say, when you read, would you kind of take in consideration the background of each author? Great
question. So yes, I do. In other words, I don't, I'll give you an example. I can't stand Thiessen. I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean not as an author. I don't mind him as a person. I don't know him personally, but I don't mind that. But I don't know how well this will show up in the video, you guys. But you see, if you can see all those notes in there, that's all me disagreeing with Thiessen. What? No, that's not right. That's not. No, you're contradicting yourself over here. And if that's the case, it's this. And I just go crazy in my notes in there. That's how I learn, though. So for me, if I don't agree with somebody, sometimes that's a great way for me to remember what a subject matter. It's easier for me to disagree sometimes than it is to agree. Now that might sound like what I'm saying is it's easy to be pessimistic or negative. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's easier to find something and go, because in theology, almost nobody agrees 100% with anyone else on everything that they hold. It's just the way it is. But we don't need to break fellowship with one another over those types of things. However, with Thiessen, let me go back to why I said that. I don't believe he's being intellectually dishonest. And to answer the question that was posed, and Erika's question as she framed it, is that I won't have anyone's books in my library if I am concerned about their intellectual honesty, if that makes any sense, or if that answers the question. Yeah? That close, you think, anyway? Okay. So if it comes up as I'm going through these, I'll let you know. But for instance, I'll give a good example here. Some people accuse Michael Heiser of putting out extra biblical sources, meaning sources that are outside the Bible, as on par with the Bible. And I've heard him vehemently denounce that, and I don't see that in his writing at all. Not to mention, a lot of what he's put forth, and he says this himself, is not new. Guys, it's not new, and he even says this. And not to mention, you go and look through the commentaries and stuff, this is stuff academics have been talking about for a while. Some of it, depending on what it is, I've seen in my Schofield Reference Bible. In fact, it's right here. I got this one when I got saved back in, you can see it's falling apart now, and I marked this thing up. I mean, I glued inserts in there with all kinds of notes. That's not part of it. And I just went, crazy. But some of what Heiser proposes, or puts forth in his work isn't new. And he doesn't say it is. I'm not trying to, criticize him at all. But I find him to be very honest and credible, and somebody like him, people may not agree with, which is fine. I don't mind that at all. But as far as his skill with the text, even when I don't agree with him, I don't agree with him on everything he says, but I still find him to be brilliant. I mean, Erika's heard me in the office going, oh, I don't agree with that, right? No, it can't be that. That's not right. It would contradict this. But I still find him credible, and I find him to be intellectually honest. And most of the guys that you see that with have some, even if it's one course, some philosophy in their background. Not because all philosophers are honest. That's not it. It has to do with the different things that you learn in philosophy about contradictions and holding to beliefs that are contradictory, that are self-refuting of some sort. So hopefully that helps. moving on, ontology. I talked about metaphysics in that. An Introduction to Ontology by Nick Effingham. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Great work also. Again, it's in the vein of metaphysics, but really easy to read and understand. See what I put, you'll see, if you see these flags in the books, it's because I'm either using them for school, for quotes, or just for my own study. I see something, I go, oh, that's a great thing to know. Now this one, Philosophy of Religion by William Lane Craig, is an excellent work. Guys, if you aren't into philosophical theology or philosophy of religion, and you only like apologetics, still a great work, because he represents a lot of the arguments that we use in apologetics in here. Obviously the Kalam and other things, but this is just an incredible work. Now this is going to be, I bought this used, I think, more on the expensive side. I don't remember what I paid for it. It's probably an $80 book new. So a lot of mine I get used because I just can't afford to buy these things new. And sometimes you have to sit and wait forever on some of these, particularly the philosophical ones that are philosophy of religion, philosophical theology. They're going to tend to be a little more expensive. So, great book. Philosophy of Religion, A Reader and Guide. Editor William Lane Craig. And then the Quinn and Talafrino companion book to that is Blackwell's Companion to Philosophy, and it's Companion to Philosophy of Religion, and this is just an incredible work. I was looking back to see if I grabbed the right companion book. Phenomenal. I mean, this is 800 pages, 600 pages, and it's a compendium, or it's a compilation, I should say, of different authors that are writing on the different topics, and there are some great papers in here, including papers from, again, Richard Swinburne. I don't agree with on everything, but good papers. Dr. William Lane Craig. If you like Reformed theology, then of course Alvin Plantinga in there as well. So I do have Plantinga's books. Now I will say, if you're big on Reformed epistemology, you probably are already aware of these. If you're not pretty well versed in philosophy, I wouldn't recommend Warranted Christian Belief. I would recommend Knowledge and Christian Belief, which is the simplified, streamlined version, and you can see the difference in the thickness of the two. Again, you could still pick this up. I always encourage folks to read above their skill level. I don't mean the words, but I mean the knowledge base, because it brings you up. Granted, yes, it's slow going because you have to look up every other thing sometimes to understand what the author's saying. Not a bad thing. If you've got the income for it, it's worth a read. But this is just as good if you're just wanting to understand Plantinga a little bit. Again, that's Knowledge and Christian Belief. All right. Anything on those, Mom?
Question time?
Yeah. Any questions on those so far?
Yes, I think they're kind of answering questions.
Okay. Between each other.
But they were talking about, are we going to have Snapchat soon? And somebody was saying, we have to, that's my tea, so you might not like that. And they were saying that, we have to have more subscribers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Also, another question from Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Is Sean going to talk about where is God and we meet him soon?
Yes, so I did that video, but actually, technically, we're recording over it right now. This video needs a new title. In other words, what happened, guys, is that this particular video that was scheduled for tonight is talking about these books in the library. The video on Where is God When I Need Him Most, we shot, I don't know, 2 months ago? A month ago? Couldn't have been that long.
I can look it up if
Yeah.
you'd like me to.
So I'm sorry about that. Was that Elizabeth's question?
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that, Elizabeth. Yeah, that was one we already did.
Yes.
But
would you like me to put the link?
Yes, if you can find the link.
You put the link to that video.
What happened was, in order to stream this from the way we're doing it tonight, it was very difficult, and so I just had to grab anything it would let me do, and so I just told the system to, is it recording over it?
I understand why Elizabeth is talking about that, because this is actually being filmed on top of it.
Oh, that's why, yeah, it is being filmed on top of it. I'll reshoot it. I'll reshoot it
I
for
actually
you.
have a link for that, Elizabeth. I'm going to give it to you.
But the video won't be there if it's being recorded on top of it.
No, I think it's separate.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
this is, I think, I love that book too.
This is one of my favorites. Now, like anything, you'll hear me, that one of my catchphrases tonight is going to be, I don't endorse everything these people say, okay? And I'll even preface this a little bit more to say, I'm a little concerned with some of the things I've seen come out of this group. I'll explain that. And that is the Bible Project. But this book is wonderful. This is huge illustrations of the different books of the Bible, whereby they go and outline the entire book. And this is a great resource for when you're trying to get that mile-high view when you're going to go through and study a book. It's always good to look at it this way first and understand, if I'm in Leviticus, how the book is set up, what are the main points of it, so that when you're doing a study, it really helps give you that bird's eye view of the text before you go diving into certain verses. For what it is, this book is wonderful. I love it. It's great for the kids. It's a great coffee table book, but I love it. And it's huge. Give you guys an idea how big that is. I forget how large exactly.
Yeah, our table is not big enough.
Yeah, our coffee table
It's
in here is, yeah. I mean, it's, to give you an idea, I'm 5 foot, how big am I? 5'8.5". So it's pretty large, but it's a great book. Illustrated Summaries of Biblical Books by the Bible Project.
It's like a collector's.
Get it on Amazon if you want it, not from
Why?
directly from them. You'll save money.
Oh.
It's still being sold by the Bible Project, but they discount it on Amazon. So it's less on there, if I remember right. Now, I said that I would explain why I'm a little concerned, is that I've seen them do some word study videos, whereby, I forget the particular one, they did the word study and they explained what the word meant, and I went, that's not what the word means. And I looked up the word just to clarify. It was an Old Testament word. I think it was on the soul maybe, or I don't remember exactly. And sure enough, they picked the most infrequent reading. In other words, what I mean here is that they picked the reading that was it only meant that one time. It was not the universal meaning for the word soul. I thought, well, okay, maybe they just did that on accident. Next time another video came out, or I went and looked up another one of theirs on the word studies, and it was the same thing. And I went, okay. Now, sometimes pastors and people do this to get people's attention, so that what they're teaching sounds new or fresh. And I find that to be somewhat intellectually dishonest. It could be an accident. It could be whoever was doing the research there didn't realize that. It could be any number of things. It could be the resource they're using. I don't know. But I only looked up 2 or 3 videos where I found that to be the case, and I just stopped. I was like, all right. So again, that's only in the word study material. In their overview stuff where they're outlining books, I haven't found that to be the case. Even if I disagree with them on things, they seem to be fairly solid. But you guys asked, I wanted to point that out. Did you have another?
No, people are kind of talking about Bible projects, stuff like that right now. And
Okay.
yeah, so they like Bible projects.
Yeah, no, we do too. We love them. I wouldn't have spent.
Yes. Yes, but they are also talking about certain things that they agree, disagree.
Yeah.
So I think they get you.
No one like him, John S. Feinberg. You guys have heard me mention this before. The kids, remember this? Us doing Bibles? Yeah, yeah. We do study theology out of this. You'll see all these little pieces of paper are places for me to hold my spot when I'm reading through this for the kids. This is an incredible book. I think maybe $40 on Amazon, worth every penny. It is going to be not only a general theology book dealing with the attributes of God, but it's also going to have some things that aren't normally in a book like this, including God and time. Feinberg has some philosophical background. I don't remember exactly what that is. I believe he's a philosopher, theologian of sorts. But he writes it's very easy to understand. You don't need a philosophy background. If you're Calvinist leaning, or you're Calvinist, you're going to love him. He is too. If you're not, it won't matter. He's not insulting anyone who's not a Calvinist. He's really easy to read. He's enjoyable. He makes sound good sense. And again, he's got some topics in here that you normally wouldn't find in a theology book. And that's why I love him. I bought him for a friend recently because that's how much I love Feinberg. And so no one like him. It's in the Foundations of Evangelical Theology. Great, solid. If you could only get one theology book, I would actually recommend this. Now, why? It's because it's not just dealing with the fundamentals of theology you're going to run into, but more contemporary issues that are important by most theologians' standards. And so I really like it. And he's very fair. If he's dealing with a position where people may disagree, he treats the position very fairly, I think. So, great book. I love it. And academic, too. And I really trust Feinberg. Okay, then moving along. Now, ironically for apologetics, not as much. And I've got a couple of Erika's recommendations I'll pull out in a second. But this is the Chronicles of the Adonai. The Colony is the particular volume here, and this is written by Dr. Braxton Hunter. I had to read this for one of my classes in school, and I loved it. I loved it so much I encouraged our two older, at the time was 13 and 11-year-olds. They loved it. One of them was asking me, when are you getting the next one? I keep going, I got to order it. So Dr. Hunter, if you're watching, not me, send them a copy. I'm just saying. But no, seriously, it's awesome. Now, full disclosure, Dr. Hunter is the president of the college where I attend, but that has nothing to do with why I'm recommending it. It's not only a great story, which is really inviting, I found, but it's also, the apologetics in this are incredible. In the sense that, you'd say, well, what do you mean? Well, it's got the kalam in it, it's got the teleological argument in it, it's got other arguments in it, but it's the way he weaves them throughout the story. You don't normally see that done in a fictional work like this. So it is a great book. Again, Chronicles of the Adonai, and this particular, it's the first volume is The Colony by Dr. Braxton Hunter. I highly recommend it. Teenagers or adults, whatever, if you like reading like C.S. Lewis kind of work. It's not the same genre, but that same vein. And of course, C.S. Lewis's material. Love that. Yeah, I'm going to do 2 here, and then I'll stop and let you do your 2, and that'll be great. I'll take a break. I'm sure everyone's done. Tired of looking at my ugly mug. I have a few more, but if you want to interrupt, that'll be great. To break it up, I'll do these 2, and then if you want to do some of yours, and then I'll come back and finish up.
You really love that one, don't you?
Defending the Gospel in Legal Style is
you
by
got excited when that came, right?
Yeah, by John Warwick Montgomery.
Yeah.
So this is just great. He is a theologian, philosopher, I'm pretty sure, and a attorney. And the guy's brilliant. And so this is sort of, you can see how many different marks I've got here, folks. There's sections of it where it's just different. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's very thorough. I will say if you have no legal training background, it may be a little bit slow in parts where you have to kind of take your time with some of the sections. But it's worth it, because when you understand what he's saying, you realize the force of how trustworthy the Bible really is, according to using legal standards by which to look at it. Okay, so that's fantastic. And then in the same vein, Cold Case Christianity by J. Warner Wallace. Most of you who I know are on our channel will recognize this immediately. Great book at a more fundamental level. Not that anything Brother Wallace is saying in here is basic. It's the way he approaches it, though. Anyone can pick it up pretty much and read it and understand it and walk away. And I really love his evidential approach with some things in regards to the I forget the section now. It had to do with now if I remember again I'll mention it, but there's a section where he's talking about the different church fathers and the credibility, the chain of custody, and how the church fathers, we can look and see their writings and to see if the Bible's credible. And just he mentions things that many apologists forget about. Which is a great job. So
yes, Thinker's love that one.
yeah,
too.
that's a solid one there. I mean, that's, you pretty much can't go wrong. On evil right now, this is tricky because I haven't gotten a chance to read. I'll be honest with y'all, through a lot of these. Again, Feinberg, The Many Faces of Evil. What I have read of this, I love. So this is going to deal with like Canaanite genocide and or well, actually, I don't remember if Canaanite genocide's in this. Let me check real quick. But certainly does deal with natural evil and moral evils in the world. And I remember I mentioned Feinberg is a Calvinist, so he's, sometimes some Calvinists find this difficult to deal with. Feinberg doesn't. He does a great job with it. And I'm not saying Calvinists don't have an answer. I think one of the greatest answers is by Alvin Plantinga, who's Reformed. So, it's not that they don't have an answer for it. It's a logical problem of evil, evidential problem of evil, problem of hell, religious problem of evil. So, there you go. Great work. Pretty much anything by Paul Copan is going to be good. And I will let Erika do a couple.
I don't have many, but I will just say hi to thinkers and
Okay.
give you a little water break. And
Yes.
you can chat with thinkers if you want to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hey thinkers. So I want to first, before I show you the books I like, do a little bit of explanation of some of the books I think is noteworthy. Did you mention this one?
No.
2 volume of Miracles, can you guys see it? By Craig Keener. And look how thick they are, how much work he did about the subject of miracles. So if you are interested in the topic of miracles, he's the one to study from. I highly recommend it. This is not the kind of book you might sit in, from front to back. But if you want a reference, he has done many interviews. He did many studies. Particularly in this second volume, you can read a lot about his findings. And if you just want a brief preview kind of thing, he has some YouTube videos you can look up, and he's going to explain a few of the very interesting stories about miracles he found on YouTube. So I recommend that. And if you really like the YouTube video, I recommend you checking out these 2 volumes. It's really noteworthy. What else was I going to say? I was going to actually recommend the Bart Ehrman's book. I said I was not going
Down.
to, but I think it's something
Down?
noteworthy.
Yep. Right
Down.
where you're, no, not the up one, and then over to your right. Right, next shelf, next bookshelf. Keep going, you'll see it. It's actually sticking out for you.
So this one,
Yep.
I think this is noteworthy. Bart Ehrman's Did Jesus Exist? And the reason I think it's very noteworthy is that some of you know Bart Ehrman is not Christian, but he does write in this book. You might like it, you might not, but Jesus Christ did exist. And that's why I find this book to be very valuable. And he writes his opinion. Of course, I don't agree with everything he says 100%, but I do appreciate his honesty in coming to that conclusion. He talks about how much critics or, people, how much people didn't like what he had to say with his study, but he does write his opinion in this book. So that's for that reason I thought this book is noteworthy. What did you think, Sean?
Yeah, I
of
agree
this
with you.
book?
Because if the skeptical guys are going to accept that Jesus does exist, if you think about it from Dr. Habermas's point of view, then how much more should we quit trying to say that he doesn't?
Right. And I did meet some atheist people online that says that there is absolutely no proof that Jesus Christ existed. And so, when you hear something like that, I feel like a book like this is handy. Okay, because he's clearly not writing from biased perspective, right? So for that reason, I thought it's very useful. And the books I did want to recommend, there are a couple of books I want to recommend, and they are all for beginners. So they're easy to read. This is wonderful. So Great Salvation, Charles Spiley. And like Sean said, any book from him, pretty good, right? So this talks mostly about Lordship salvation. The topic of salvation, we think we know it, but more you think about it, maybe some of us, can use review, or when you start hearing other people's opinion, you might start to want to learn more. And this book is really helpful in the Does Faith Come by the salvation come by faith, or is it from work, or is it a combination of both? So this is the book about that. If I'm not speaking clearly, sorry, it's because I'm not feeling my best. I hope I'm making sense. The Soul Great Salvation, Charles Riley. This book I found was also available on Logos for those of you who haven't. Wait, is it because you purchased it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's on Logos. No, I don't remember what happened. How I got both.
Yeah.
I think one came as a part of one of the packages, if that makes sense. Like you get a bunch of books together.
Oh,
That's what it was.
Oh,
I bought the
that's
Ryrie
right.
pack, and so it came with all the Ryrie's
because
publications.
I remember I read some of the in here and some of them on Logos.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great. Wonderful book. Easy to read, short. So you can read in one sitting if you have time. And also, wonderful book, Tactics. This book is great. Okay, so this is a book about, would you say apologetics topic?
Yeah.
Which is,
Particularly like how to.
How to, like mostly to your friends, not really debate setting, right? About
Yeah,
how to share
right.
your faith, which you
Right.
say.
Right.
He is really great because his book, his method that he developed is very easy to understand. Gregory Kuko, right?
Coco.
Kuko. So he also have some YouTube videos that you can watch to check him out. But he developed this method about how you can show your face, how you can review some objections, things like that. And it's really wonderful to read this and memorize some of the advice that he has. The way I read it is I listen to this on audiobook per plan. So if you're an audiobook kind of person, and if you have a membership in your local library, you might be able to do the same as well. I really enjoyed it. I found it very useful. My daughter also read it, but she's in process of reading it, and it's great. He names some of the tactics in easy to understand, easy to memorize kind of friendly names for you. Like what was some of the words that he used? Do you remember anything, Sean? Like suicide.
Yeah.
Sorry, it doesn't sound very friendly, sorry. It just means that it is contradicting itself. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I am not speaking English right now. That kind of thing he refers to as suicide, but he just names some easy to remember kind of thing. What was
The Columbo?
Columbia,
The
cute,
Columbo
right?
tactic, yeah.
So that makes it just fun to read, easy to understand and remember, and really good. Also, I really love that he says the point of all this. Let's not forget that we could get all caught up, right, in discussing with your friends, sharing your faith. But let's not forget that if one of you lose temper, you are now winning the person to Christ. So let's not forget that. Let's remember to be courteous, keep good manner. So I love the basic tips like that from him. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm not speaking very clearly
Oh,
tonight.
you're okay. You're
So,
okay.
one more book I like to recommend, which we do not have in physical form, is On Guard by William Lane Craig. How many of you have On Guard? It's great. He talks about that all the time in his class. It's for beginner, but he does cover, I want to say he covers a wide variety of apologetic subject in not too deep, easy to understand, easy to digest kind of way. And I did read some of it on audiobook by borrowing this in a local library, but also read digital form, in written form as well. So you can get them in all kinds of different formats. It's so wonderful if you already are familiar with apologetics and want a little bit of review. It's also great for that use as well. So I highly recommend those books. And I think that's all the recommendation I have. Did you have enough rest?
Yep, thank you. All right,
Yeah.
ding, 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 I'm tapping out, coming back in. All right, guys, so another one. This is a phenomenally good one. Sorry, guys, that my eyes adjusted. This light is
Yeah.
like, oh, I feel like I'm getting ready to get beamed up by aliens or something. It's so bright. Is Scientism and Secularism by J.P. Moreland. This book is excellent for dealing with the skeptic that says, well, the only way you can prove the existence of God is if you use empirical data, and it has to be DNA evidence and videotape or nothing. And that's just simply ridiculous, obviously, requirement. But more importantly is it stems from the philosophical, not really scientifical, position of scientism, okay, which is a misunderstanding really of what science is and how it works. And so Moreland gets in here and just does an incredible job. Dr. J.P. Moreland, Scientism and Secularism, does an incredible job with this, of dealing with that topic. Wonderful, easy to read and understand. They have it in audiobook form, so it's worth, we have both, so because I like that. I like to be able to listen while I'm reading. Unfortunately, I'm a mixture of two different learning styles, actually three, and so for me sometimes it helps to read out loud. Yeah, I'm that guy. But anyway, great book. I also want to mention Greg Koukl's Tactics is based, actually, believe it or not, on the Socratic method. So for those of you that really love that and want to go deeper, Peter Kraft, Socratic Logic, excellent book, recommended by one of my professors. Excellent book. I just can't say enough good about it. The Socratic method is what most of us are actually used to, whereby we ask questions. Again, Tactics by Greg Koukl really is a great exposition of it, but this is where it comes from, Socrates. So, wonderful book if you like that kind of thing. Just a couple more. I'm almost done. Coming around the corner. Let's see. So for those of you that have Greek training, even if you don't, I mean, still you can use this book. This is Murray J. Harris's book, Jesus as God. This book is incredible, particularly if you get you're talking to Jehovah's Witnesses and or folks from Islam, okay? Because it's going to deal with the 8 or 9 verses that I say 8 or 9. I think it's 8 in total, but there's a couple extras that deal with the deity of Christ. So the verses that deal with the deity of Christ directly. So like Thomas's statement, "My Lord and my God," right? And it deals with those verses from the standpoint of, what the scholars actually have to say about it. So it's given you the actual academics. This guy says, Bob Smith over here says there should be a comma. You know, John Mark over here says that no, the comma doesn't need to be there, and here's why. It's technical, but it's written in a way where even if you don't have Greek training, you can understand it. And if you really, the only Greek training you honestly need is to be able to read Koine Greek. In other words, just, be able to sound out the letters, okay, and know a few words. Most of them you already probably know, okay, and from there, it's actually fairly easy. It's not overly technical in that sense. Powerfully good book. Again, Murray J. Harris, Jesus as God. I picked this up off of a recommendation from Dr. William Lane Craig in one of his Defenders class broadcasts, and I snagged it used. It's a great book. So, well worth it. In the vein of the resurrection is The Resurrection of Jesus by Michael Licona, a new historiographical approach. This is a very thick book. I would not use it to read from cover to cover, but rather as a reference work. But it's great because not only does Licona takes, I don't know, like the first, I could tell you, 100 pages or so to lay out his method, all right? But he then gets into, what are facts, problem with postmodernist history, what is truth, is history a science, what do historians do, from theory to method, arguments for the best explanation, inference to the best explanation, so on and so forth. Then the historians and how they think about miracles, or the historians and miracles, but he's going to deal with Hume and others. And it's not until chapter 3, 200 pages in, where he starts getting into all the different traditions and then everything else. Now you may say, well, that sounds like a negative, but it's not. He's that thorough. So again, Dr. Michael Licona's work, The Resurrection of Jesus, a new historiographical approach. I don't know what it is, probably $40. It's worth every penny, and then some. And of course, those of you that don't know, Dr. Lycona is a student. He did some of his, I think, his postgrad work with Dr. Habermas. I'm pretty sure. I know they're good friends, but I'm pretty sure he did that.
You nailed the price. That was exactly how much they're going for on christianbook.com.
Nice.
But they're low on Barnes and Noble.
Nice. There are some other ones, guys. I'll just do one or two more. This one on, I know what I was going to do. Reinventing Jesus by Kamasensky. Sorry. I should be able to do Polish names better. I'm 1/4 Polish, but yeah. Sawyer, Wallace, Daniel Wallace. Brilliant scholar, particularly when it comes to textual criticism and languages. He's got, just look him up, Daniel B. Wallace, and New Testament something manuscripts. There is the Center for New Testament Manuscripts, I think, is the name of the website, where they deal with a lot of the textual criticism stuff. He and his crew go out and photograph all these old manuscripts that they're finding still, and record them and digitally restore them. Just incredible guy, very brilliant man. This is a great book, Reinventing Jesus: How Contemporary Skeptics Miss the Real Jesus and Mislead Popular Culture. And you might think somebody like Bart Ehrman, doesn't belong in a library like ours, but you see, we got it used. But the reason I grabbed this one is it actually has his quote on page 252, where he says he actually agrees with Professor Metzger's position that essentially, and he's been held on the record for this now for a long time, but when I picked this up, it wasn't as well known, that Bart Ehrman agrees that even though the accusations he makes about errors in the New Testament exist, that it's still reliable in that sense. I'm not quoting him word for word there, I'm just saying. And then Timothy Paul Jones' book, countering Ehrman's book, misquote. So this one's misquoting truth.
Yeah.
So the first one's
It's written by Timothy. Okay.
Yeah, Timothy Paul Jones. And then
Yeah, that one you recommended that to me.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember that.
There's a couple more here I could go on with. I'll just be brief about it. The Historical Reliability of the Gospels by Craig Blomberg. Love that. Quite thick. I'll hand it over to Erika so she can jot it down for y'all.
Okay.
The Historical Reliability of the New Testament. So the first was just the Gospels, also by Craig Blomberg. Wonderful book. Not a small book, but again, you're not necessarily going to read it these cover to cover. They're reference works. That's a bit academic. Yes, thank you, sweetheart. You can give it to Mom when you're ready. Why Are There Differences in the Gospels by Dr. Mike Lycona. Brilliant book. Very interesting how we can learn from ancient biography. So there again, and a new one to our library, and one I'm very excited about because there's quite a few philosophical type articles in this. In Defense of the Bible. So the editors are Steve Cowan and Terry L. Wilder. Stephen B. Cowan, or Stephen B. Cowan. Brilliant. And you've got it's a bunch of articles from different scholars, and so you've got there was one in particular that I was like, yes, I want to read that. William Dembski, which is interesting. Cowan himself, Walter Kaiser Jr. Where's the one? Dan Wallace. That was the one I was like, oh, I kind of want to read that. Has the New Testament text been hopelessly corrupted? And then, does the Bible condone genocide? There again with Flanagan and Paul Copan. Does the Bible condone slavery and sexism? By Hamilton. And there was another one in here by, what's her name? Where is it? I thought. Female, Mary Jo Sharp. There it is. Is the story of Jesus borrowed from pagan myths? So a lot of these lectures you guys may have heard before from these scholars, but now they're collected in this book, In Defense of the Bible. Love this. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. So that's a great one. I don't know if you want to copy that. Yep. I guess I could go on, but most of the rest are going to be textbooks. There's a lot of language studies and whatnot that I use. Oh, I do have one. Those of you that are David Wood followers, right? I sort of say fans, but that's not really David Wood followers like myself. This copy of the Quran, all right, for defense against, right, Islam, I find wonderful because, I'll show you guys why. Not only do you have the Arabic, you have the English translation, you have the transliteration written in English. So you have the actual words written out in English and emphasized. There's a whole method. And this comes from the some official, I'm trying to remember where it is. It's translated in English by Abdallah Yusuf Ali. All right, and this is printed in Damascus, Syria, and so it's authoritative in the sense that it's not done by Christian scholars who, Muslims wouldn't accept, the scholarship of the translation and the work.
The light kind of turned different when the left light turned off.
Oh, that's okay. All right. Is it too dark? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, and it just goes on, and it still has all the references you'd be used to, but it also has color coding, so it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful resource. I got this Amazon. Again, same thing. Amazon.
What would they type in?
I would do Tawhid Quran. And transliteration. This was one of the first ones that came up, believe it or not, when I looked for it.
People type that.
Yeah, and if you sort of look at how it looks, right? I'll give that over to Erika so she can. And then of course we've got Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih al-Bukhari there. I don't have Sahih Sunni Muslim or Sahih Muslim. I don't remember the pronunciation of that one.
I want to recommend this.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to talk about that?
So this
Action Bible
is the Action Bible. So those of you that aren't familiar with it, it is a sort of a comic book. The whole thing is like this.
Beautiful, all color.
And I can hear Nate 2D2 saying, "Is this my preferred Bible?" And yeah, the answer is yeah. This is what I. No, seriously, this thing is wonderful.
Yeah, sorry if I interrupted you.
Yeah, we used to use this for family Bible study time with the kids when they were younger, exclusively. Now we've since moved to the Bible and whatnot, but they loved it when they were so little. Reading stuff to them it didn't make sense. But at some point, I wanted the older ones to get more meat and the younger ones to sort of come up a level, and so we jumped. But they've got a few comic books like this. Here they are. Or comic book type prints rather. The battle begins. The story of creation.
Wonderful. It's a wonderful gift to give to children, teens. Yeah.
Our now 6-year-old, who was 5 when he got that, was blown. Oh, thank you.
I appreciate
Read
the
it?
detail.
Yeah, over and over again. And same thing. They've got their own the Action Bible handbook. So like a dictionary, people, places, and things, like their own little commentary. I absolutely love this. And so these are just wonderful. Something that what I've since do now is that I basically take them through, even when we had the Action Bible, is we'd read the passage and I would ask some questions first off to make sure they're following, that I'm not losing them reading too fast, that they understand the concepts. I would literally just ask questions about what I read. Now that actually reinforced in my mind what I just read as well. Then once we did that, I would then ask them 2 major questions. Do you remember what those questions are, Abby?
No,
Put me on the spot. That's all right. Once I say them, she's going to go, oh yeah, that's what you meant. So the first one was, what does this passage tell us about God? All right. And then secondly, what is the passage, if anything, does it tell us about what we need to do, how we need to respond to God? Some passages don't contain that. You can sort of force a meaning like that onto the passage, but it can be rather tricky. Anyway, that's most of it. Any questions? Anything else you guys have?
Can you ask me if you have questions?
Great. You're doing a great job moderating it.
Slowing down. Some people might be getting sleepy.
Yeah, we're getting off. We're getting ready to call it a night ourselves. But
yes, thank you so much, everyone.
yeah,
for
thank you
finding
guys.
us. I know, we've been having technical difficulty, but
Oh, that reminds me. Tomorrow night, of course,
Awesome.
is JMD Apologetics 101.
oh yes.
Interview. We're
What
going to try to
time?
do that. That should be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a little early for some of you. Then the following night is Eric Hernandez, and we got a special treat for you guys. That is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we won't have any more streams this week. We'll continue on next week with some live events. So, yeah, that's what we'll be doing.
Okay, so to review tomorrow
Tomorrow, yep.
is happening. When else did you say?
Tomorrow, 7 p.m.
And the
Eastern
after?
Standard Time. And then the very next day, 8:30 p.m.
Alright.
Eastern Standard Time. That's with Eric Hernandez.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Awesome interviews.
Yep. So those are 2 interviews. I'm really excited because I got treats for you guys on that. And then,
Is there anything you guys want to ask these people?
yeah, if there is, let us know.
Send us email.
Send us an email. Let us know what questions.
hello@believingthinkers.com, okay?
Yeah. I know some of you got to see or have the group chat with John last week, which was
That's
awesome.
right. You guys are so awesome. Many of you installed the app to join us, and we really love having you guys.
We love you guys and we appreciate
Yeah,
you. We
that
really
was
do.
great.
Your dedication to what we're doing. And we're trying to do as much as we can to be a blessing back for you guys as well. And we appreciate all the support on Patreon too. We picked up 4 supporters last week. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
We really just can't thank you enough. I'm sorry for any names that are appearing right now on the screen. I'm trying to take care of that with the app. I won't be using the app for a few days or a couple weeks until I get it totally figured out, so stuff like that doesn't happen anymore. But anyway, yeah. Anything else? Questions?
No, that's it. Oh, Stacey, thank you. Looking forward to
Oh,
it.
y'all bet.
Thank you.
You bet. Hey, we love y'all. Be safe. Take care. Have a great night. God bless. And we will see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bye.
That won't work. Hop up.